Carly, why does it seem like most people in today's society have a weak mind?
Yeah, so this is an interesting dynamic. The perception that we may have, even about ourselves, is that there's a part of us that's weak, but to the same degree that we have a level of weakness, we also have the same amount of strength. And it's just really learning how to identify our own unique strengths. The other dynamic is we really judge ourselves for having weaknesses, but the reality is that's also what makes us perfect. That what makes us beautiful. That's part of what actually builds that strength and makes us strong. You can't have one without the other, and we don't want to be strong in everything anyways. There's a infinite quantity of things on this planet. I can't imagine trying to have strength in every single asset and facet of it. It would just be too much and too overwhelming. So that's why it's wisdom when we do have that perception or we're feeling weak in those times. It's like, where else do we have the strengths and what can we focus on where our strengths truly lie? Because those are also the things that inspire us the most. They're the same things that fulfill us the most. I have weaknesses in certain areas of life because it's not as fulfilling to me. And so if I have an unrealistic expectation to be strong in those dynamics, I'm going to be focused on something that's not important to me instead of focusing on things that inspire me, fulfill me, and what I truly love.
I see what you're saying, and I agree with you in regard that we all have this different perception, and sometimes we project into others like, okay, I feel that society might have like a weak mindset when reality I feel like I have a weak mindset, or just in general. But one of the reasons why I ask this question is because you, again, and I don't know if this is the perspective of highly successful people, but what highly successful people have been mentioning quite a lot, or just saying out loud quite a lot recently, is that the bar to be successful has never been set so low. It's almost like a lot of people give up even before they start. It seems like a lot of people are not willing to grind, or just whether it's on the entrepreneurial side, or just a pursuing a passion, or even pursuing relationships. It seems like people don't have what it takes, or there's a victimhood mentality that is affected us society as a whole. So I just wanted to know exactly your opinion about this, and is this truly accurate, or it can be something that only a handful of people see once they're at the top.
Mhm. Well, we all fall in and out of the victim style mentality, and even someone at the top is going to fall into that mentality. So it's unrealistic to think that someone, once you get to the top, is overcome something or almost become enlightened in some way, shape, or form. All they have that's different than an individual who perhaps didn't grind in the beginning, wasn't hustling in the beginning, was a different set of values, something that was purposeful to them that was different than what's purposeful to the person who we're saying made it. Because what's interesting, if you look at the individual who didn't make it, what we'll witness is they did make it, but they made it somewhere else that this person who we're labeling as made it couldn't even access. And the reason why is because it's just not important to them. I have a good giggle with one of my mentors on a regular basis. He definitely has like different purpose, different values, and there's some areas of life that he can run circles around me, right? But there's other areas of life that I run circles around him, and we have a good laugh because, yeah, there's sometimes where he'll talk about specific things, and I'm like, you have no clue what you're talking about. You've read 40,000 books, and you still don't know this. And I'm like, and I love you. So it's not even to say that one is right and one is wrong, right? It's just to understand we're all different. And if I can utilize what I love and create something inspiring out of that, and he can do the same for himself, then we actually are filling the gaps in the world. Like if we were all the same and we all had the same level of hustle in the same area, like we'd be all competing for the same jobs, and there's just not enough to fill that. Everyone else has something that they're uniquely good at and something where they can fulfill that job, that position to a greater degree than perhaps being the entrepreneur or the business owner. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's 8 billion people on this planet, and everyone is necessary in some way, shape, or form to continue to have it run the way that it runs, and to continue to have the lives that we have and things to function the way that they function. So yeah, some people are going to hustle in different ways. Some people are going to grind in different ways. But again, one way is not better than another. We see this often as well when we look at sometimes physical fitness, where some people are very, very dedicated to their physical fitness, and they'll wake up every day and they spend hours in the gym and they spend hours taking care of their body, where other people might beat themselves up because they're not doing it. But the truth is that while they're hustling in the gym, you're hustling in some other area of life. I don't know what that is, but if you're listening, you'll know what I'm talking about. And you'll look and you'll think, yeah, I actually do spend a lot of time and energy on these things instead. Because you have just as much time to go to the gym. You're just choosing a different life over what this person is choosing. Just like that person prioritizes the gym over the things that you're not willing to let go of. And so every person on this planet has that grind within them, and they technically are grinding on a daily basis, but only on the things that are purposeful to them. And when we get stuck in the comparisons of what we think it should look like, what we think it needs to look like, it has to, we lose sight of who we truly are. And we start mimicking people and thinking that we're supposed to be something else instead of being ourselves, which is the magnificent one.
Yeah, I agree with the fact that we're all different. We all have different passions, and we have different, let's say, purpose, and we all have their own. We have our own road to just take. But sometimes I feel, and this is just having conversation with other people, hearing stories, that a lot of people feel stuck or even miserable. They're grinding in things that are not worth it, but it's the way that society shape us. Okay, we need to get a job, or we need to pay the bills, or we need to do X, Y, and Z, just to be sort of quote unquote part of society. But doing the things that they might be passionate about, or they might want to try it, there's a lot of fear involved. And besides the fear is a lot of anxiety, is the unknown. And what stops a lot of people from taking the leap of faith might be maybe not such a strong mind to endure the pain that you feel at the beginning when you're facing the unknown, when you are not familiar with what you're doing, and the uncertainty that really can stop you from either reaching your potential or doing something that you truly love.
And this dynamic is, it's not just the pain, it's also the pleasure, right? So there's pain and pleasure in every situation. But if you're only seeking the pleasure and you're avoiding the pain, it's not a realistic goal. I know that that's not something meaningful enough for you, because anything that's truly meaningful, you embrace both pleasure and pain for. I have certainty on that. And if you look at your life, there's going to be things where you have both pleasure and pain there. If you're seeking a one sided goal of only pleasure, you're not having an objective, realistic goal. You're seeking a fantasy, because there's nothing on this planet that has only one side. Things are challenging to achieve. We take great strides to make things happen. Like, it takes planning and strategic planning and refining and failing on a regular basis. But we don't even label it as failing when we're doing something that's meaningful to us. And so what's funny is everyone puts these people on a pedestal that have done amazing things. But what you're watching is, you're just watching someone dedicated to something that's important to them, and they're not willing to give up. And it's not that they're not facing challenges. It's not that they're not facing scrutiny. It's not that they're not having a tough time. The only difference is they found something that's so important, they don't care. They're going to do it anyways. And it's still hard. And it still sucks some days. And some days they still really like question what's going on. But the difference is, it's too important to let go of. And I highly suggest like individuals find those things that are so important that you don't want to let go of it, because you'll tap into that innate nature within you that wants to achieve that to such a great degree. And remember too, it doesn't always have to be in the public eye. It's not always going to show up on a grand scale. So it's also this idea and this unrealistic ideal that we've placed on life, that it has to be a certain way for us to be amazing or have an impact or do this or that. The reality is you can make a great impact just raising your kids, staying home, and being a part of your community. It's not that big of a deal. Like, we put all these people on a pedestal and they've done cool things and we love them, but again, it's someone just focused on what's important to them. And if you focus on what's important to you, remember that could be your kid one day. People like that just don't come out of nowhere. There's also parents who have nurtured them and raised them to a certain degree, or sometimes challenge them so much and piss them off so much that they're like, I'm going to do this anyway, mom and dad. So we have the perfect upbringings for us. Again, it's this dynamic when we're trying to make the world what we think it should be, instead of appreciating the world for what it truly is, that we start to get miserable. Because the funny thing is, and this I laugh at it all the time, because I laugh at it with myself as well, is like, when I'm upset and I'm sad and all this stuff, it's like, well, what am I really upset at? The world isn't doing what I want it to do. Who do I think I am that the world's gonna like jump through hoops for me? And it's the same with all of us. It's like, okay, so what is the world, the universe actually giving me? What is this life that I have that I can actually learn to appreciate, because I must be experiencing it for a reason? And when we ask those questions and sort of change the dialogue even with ourselves, we can ask ourselves some quality questions. It's like, how is this actually serving me the way it is, instead of the way I think it should be, the fantasy that I'm placing on life, the unrealistic expectations. Sometimes it's funny, our brains act like gods even though we have no control over the dynamics of what's occurring, and we're mad at it because we want it to change, instead of loving and appreciating our life for what it truly is.
You know what? I see that polarity that we need to accept. The good with the bad, the positive with the negative, the enjoyment or the pleasure with the pain. But even as a, I guess I'm coming from a place that even when I decided to do this podcast, or when I started this podcast, it was kind of like following my intuition. Like, it was something in my mind for the last 6 7 years, but never had like a true concept or idea, and then it just came last year. It's like, hey, this is where you need to go. And I kid you not, every single day, at least for the first 4 or 5 months, when I started getting all the knowledge and building the website and learning about podcasting and all of that, every single day I have that self-doubt. It's like, why are you doing this? Why even bother? Why matter? I mean, nobody's gonna listen to you, nobody's gonna care. Why putting yourself in this position? So I had to ignore that voice for a while. And once I started the podcast, it came, now not as often, but every now and then it's like, okay, am I wasting my time? It's like the constant self-doubt and the constant voice in our head that I need to ignore. But there are going to be moments in my journey where, and I think that a lot of people have faced this, whether they were able to overcome it or not, when when things get tough and then you have that voice, is the not the desire, but then the inclination to just to quit it, just to not be as mentally strong to withstand that self-doubt and keep pushing forward. When people face that, what can they do to just handle those low moments in their journey?
Well, and this is where even the description that you just gave, there's a couple key components that I really want people to understand on how you shared it. Is you said you were inspired. It came to you as this idea and you were inspired to do it. So no matter what the voice said in your head, you move forward anyways. That's inspiration. That's all I'm talking about. When you can connect with something so inspiring to you, you don't need to ignore the voice. You work to make that voice get in the background. You work to dissipate it and you move forward anyways. That's why it's so important to connect to that part of us that has that inspiration, because that's how strong that inspiration is. There are other ways and dynamics, which I'll dive into, that we can shift and transform it. But one of the biggest proponents is just making sure that you're connected to that inspiration and something that's so inspiring to you that if you didn't have the tools, I know that every day you'll wake up and you'll say, thank you, but I'm not going to listen to you today. Right? I know you're going to do that because you choose what's inspiring over that dynamic. If you're not choosing something over that dynamic, it's not going to be that inspiring to you. It's just not enough for you. And that's okay. That's okay. And that could just have been something confusing that you thought it should be this way. You thought you should be doing this, as opposed to actually connecting with what you truly love. Because every day I have certainty that you're going to be investing your time and your energy and what's important to you in the things that you love the most. So yeah, it's really cool. The other thing to see as well is we have, they call it imposter syndrome, but imposter syndrome is basically comparisons. So when you're comparing yourself to other people and you're saying, I can't do it because I'm not as good at this, I'm not as good as this person, then what you're not seeing and realizing is that you already have this part inside you, but you've put some other person's form on a pedestal. You've said that this other person is better than you for whatever reason. Speaking is a great example. I have the opportunity to work with a lot of individuals who are speakers who want to start speaking, right? And they'll say, oh, I'm not a speaker. And I'm like, funny enough, you technically are, because when we're on our consults and you get inspired about something, I can't shut you up. Like, it's hard to like get you to slow down so we can actually get back to the consultation and do some work. And I'm like, so there's not only a speaker in there, but when I get you going, I can't stop you. And everyone has that inside them. And it's fun because anyone who's listening to this now, you could go and experience those moments where you just kept flowing with all the words and language and all the information because it's something that's important to you, inspiring to you. You spend a lot of time and energy on it, right? And that's all being a speaker is just focus on something that's inspiring to you. Don't get up and talk about stuff that you don't like, and this is where when we compare ourselves to other people, I could say I can't speak on certain topics and I'm accurate. I cannot speak on certain topics. So if I go and I compare myself to speakers who can speak on these other topics, then I'm going to put myself down because I think they're better because they can speak on those things. When in actuality, I don't even want to talk about that anyways. It's not something I want to share. It's not something I'm studying. It's not something I'm interested in. So it's really important when we have that self-doubt to also realize that we're just comparing ourselves to one or many individuals that we've put on a pedestal. We perceive they have something that we don't, but the truth is we have everything that they do. We just have it in our own unique form, not the form that they have it. We have it in ours. The athletes are a great example too, as well, which I kind of discussed a little bit. If they get up every day and they're working out and exercising and taking care of their body every day, I know you're doing the same thing in your form. I know every day you wake up and you're doing something very consistently on a daily basis to take care of your own health, your own wellness. And it just doesn't look like that. It doesn't look like going to the gym. Who's right and who's wrong? Who are we to say? Like there's 8 billion people on this planet. Like, do we really want to try to mold everyone into looking like the same thing and doing the same thing? No way. Diversity is what's make like it inspiring. Diverse cultures, diverse people. That's truly what's inspiring about this world.
I'm glad you touched the imposter syndrome theme. I have I had a couple of thoughts when you were talking about this. Well, one is yes, we do compare ourselves a lot with other people, to people that we are inspired by or people that we hope one day we could be like. And I differ a little bit with you in terms of they have things that we don't, but that things is just the time and effort and work that they have put that we can get to that point if we if you have a growth mindset, you know that you can learn and you can practice, and eventually it might take you a year, it might take you 10, but you'll get there. And that was one topic. But on the second part, and this is something I kind of like, I played with the idea for a while, and I struggle with the concept a bit as well. People have a different definition of imposter syndrome and how to overcome it. You see some of the highly successful people, what they say is, well, you haven't built enough evidence of you doing something, because if once you have enough evidence, then you don't feel like imposter because you have the evidence. But then in my mind, it's like, wait a minute, there's a disconnect between my mind and my body. I might have all these evidence that I can do a certain task, but then deep inside of my body, the physiological response, I still feel anxious, I still feel scared, I still feel um, nervous, and that's what it makes me feel like imposter or that I don't belong, because my body hasn't caught up with my mind. How can I bring my body in sync to my mind, even after I have certain evidence that I can do what I'm doing?
Yeah, so when you have the evidence, if something comes up that's fearful, then there's something else going on. Then there's something that's an association with something that happened in the past. It could have been something that you experienced or perhaps something that you witnessed that, as a result of someone moving forward in a similar or even same way as you're doing, caused a significant quantity of challenges. So fear is feedback. Fear is feedback that something is reminding us of a past associated perceived trauma, and the level of fear will indicate the level of trauma. So it's like we can't have these unrealistic expectations that we're not going to experience those things. Anyone who tells you they don't experience them anymore is lying to you. Like 100%. You can't get rid of any part of yourself. We all have it, and we all have it at different times. But when you understand it, it's giving yourself the opportunity to actually observe it, know where it's coming from, and then you can overcome it. Because if I'm sitting here and I'm saying, oh, I don't want to do XYZ, right? And I'm scared, even though I know I can do it, I'm like so scared. And it's like, okay, well, what happened in the past that actually was really challenging, really stressful, that you don't want to go through again? What was that? And then when you start to ask quality questions, you realize I'm not actually afraid of today. I'm afraid of repeating the past. These are the unresolved traumas that I have within my subconscious mind that create this almost fight or flight mechanism. Sometimes it takes us a little bit longer to get to some of these fears. And so I don't want people to judge themselves and be like, oh, I can't think of it. Ask yourself the question on a regular basis and eventually it will come to you, because depending on the level of perceived trauma you've gone through in the past will depend on the level that your subconscious is trying to hold on to it and block it out, because that's what it's doing. It's just trying to keep you safe. It doesn't know any better. It doesn't really know any better at all. It really is just trying to keep us safe. So us asking these questions, using our foresight, using our objective center to actually go in and dive deeper into what truly is going on, gives us the opportunity to open that up, right? Open that up and work through that dynamic. Yeah, because we don't have fears there. They don't come out of the blue. And you can't fear the unknown. Because if we think about anything that you don't know, we have no data on it. So there's nothing to be scared of, right? We only have things and fears around things that we have some level of data on, which means that that data had to come from somewhere. Somewhere in your past, you got that data. So sometimes, like an example, I've had clients who have fears of witnessing things, right? So witnessing family members go through extreme hardship and finances gives them a fear that their family is going to go through that as well. So then we're working on fears of something that they witnessed. Sometimes it's fears of something they've experienced, where I've worked on with individuals about, putting one was putting a book out, right? And they had some real tough time on the last time they put a book out. It was really hard. So they feared launching another book, right? So that was their own personal experience, but nothing is out of the blue. It's something from the past that they just are scared to go through again. And when we clear those fears about repeating the past, then you give yourself permission to move forward naturally. Yeah. But those are normal. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, we need every now and then the reminder that it's normal that we all experience this, because again, we tend to hide it from other people. I definitely hide it from other people. I the way that I show to the world is like somebody that is completely fine, okay, that nothing bothers me, but inside I could be just be freaking out, and that stops me from remembering that other people feel the same way as well. But one of the main reasons, I guess, that I was so excited to talk to you was because I've been obsessed with mindset for a long, long time, and I've addressed it in the podcast a few times. I've talked to entrepreneurs, I've talked to athletes, having different, I would say, different opinions or different angles or different ways that they develop a strong mindset. Because again, it depends on the person. But sometimes I wonder, how can we develop a strong mindset when it seems that our main obstacle, just like I said, we're talking, to achieve that is our body. It's just the unconscious mind, that physiological response in fear, in moments of fear, anxiety, or even shame. It's like, what could we do to achieve something that can set us apart? Because I think that in my mind, what sets apart from good to great to, you know, to a whole different level is how strong their mind is, how willing are they to push past their uncomforts, or their self-doubts or fears. But we tend to be a slave of our own body.
And this goes right back to living by inspiration. Like, genuinely just live by inspiration. You gave a beautiful example where you had all of these different dynamics and doubts around speaking, but you still showed up and you're living by inspiration and you do what you love. And why? You're not unique, you're not special. You're just you being you. You're being authentic. That's who you are. You love this so much that no matter what occurs, you're going to do it anyways. So it's like, find that thing that you love so much that no matter what happens, you're going to do it anyways, and launch that and go for it and continue and carry forward with that. And your life's already going to demonstrate evidence that it's important to you. Like even building my own practice, I can't even tell you how much it's been chaotic in the beginning, and it's challenging, and I get slammed, and it takes forever to build a stable, grounded business that grows. When you're starting from scratch, you have no idea what you're doing. And people don't tell you that. They just tell you can be an entrepreneur, and all these ads and stuff where it's like, you can make tens of thousands of dollars this weekend, right? Just buy my course. And I'm like, well, that's
Yeah,
how you made tens of thousands of dollars.
bingo, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The reality reality is it's a really challenging dynamic on the back end, and people aren't really sharing it. And if you do share it, like, some people will shy away immediately, right? Because they're like, I don't want to do that. But that just shows me that it's just not important enough to you. And it's not a good thing or a bad thing, because something in your life is so important to you that you're not shying away from it already. Nothing's ever missing inside us. We have this perception that things are missing, but they're not. And so if you're not willing to focus on this one thing and you perceive you don't have the strong mindset for that, where is your mindset strong? Where do you move forward in the face of challenge no matter what? Show me those areas of life. Show me what you're doing there, because that's what's inspiring to you. That's what's meaningful. That's where I know you have the most resilience, the most inspiration, the most motivation, that you'll move forward no matter what. And I'd love for you to focus more on that. So it's a great question to ask yourself and really look, because you'll see a pattern come out. If you said, where am I actually moving forward no matter what, even though it's challenging, even if I'm going to fail, even if it's not going to work, I'm still doing it anyways. Where do I do that? Start writing down all the different places in life, and you'll notice a pattern. You'll notice that it's only a few areas, and that's your inspiration. And so if you can continue to actually focus on those things that are actually that important to you, imagine what you could accomplish if you only focused on the things that you don't like to give up on. Amazing things, as opposed to like trying to focus on the things that you know you procrastinate on, you know you're frustrated because you're not doing, and it's just genuinely not important enough to you, and that's okay. That's okay. Like, sometimes we drop it, business owners, sometimes we delegate it, right? And sometimes if we have to do it, we wait until the very, 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 very last minute and then we do it, because it's like, we didn't want to do it until this point. But that's us as humans. And instead of judging our own nature, it's understanding that that's the beauty of who we are. That ensures that we're focused on what's most inspiring to us, as opposed to just having to focus on all these different dynamics that we're not really interested in engaging in.
And how can people tap into that? Because based on what you're saying, if everyone would be doing, if everyone does that, then you would see everyone being extremely inspiring. People would be struggling, but they wouldn't be miserable. They wouldn't be depressed. And yet, it seems like the majority of people are not inspired. They are not. They haven't tapped into that. And if everything is inside of ourselves, and we have all the tools that we need to develop a strong mindset, to do something that we love, to develop resilience, what do people need to do to find that and to tap into that?
Yeah. Well, first, I don't want to set an unrealistic expectation for people that they're
Mm.
going to like overcome every challenge and depression and being frustrated. Like, that's pretty normal. Again, it's a feedback mechanism. So even depression is a feedback mechanism that we're comparing our current reality to a fantasy. We wish our life was a certain way, and our life is showing up a way that we're not approving of, right? Again, this is where it gives me a little giggle, because sometimes I'll be like, who do you think you are, Carly? Like, how do you know better than like the universe? Like, how do you think you know better? And then I ask myself the question, well, how is this serving me today? How is what I have serving me? Because this fantasy is actually not serving me. Wishing my life was different does not serve me. It makes me depressed. It makes me sad, instead of being grateful for what I have. Then we can have more to be grateful for. The other dynamic is, as we move through these different stages of life, like, this is part of the beauty of life. It's really part of the beauty of life, is we get to grow. We get to evolve. When we feel stuck, we get very frustrated because we don't feel like we're growing, right? That's part of who we are innately. We love growth. Every person on this planet loves growth, or else we all wouldn't be saying like, what, oh, I'm stuck. I feel stuck. I hate feeling stuck, right? That's how much we love growth as like a human being, as the human race. And so giving ourselves the opportunity to really grow in these ways that are inspiring to us is something that it's wisdom for us to focus on, and making sure that we're connected with that component. You can really pay attention and tell what's important to you, because it's going to be the things that you don't procrastinate on. So if I look at you and I see that you're highly reliable, what are you highly reliable for? What do you not procrastinate on? What every day would you not need me to remind you to do? Every day you wake up and you do stuff that you need no input from me or anyone else. You don't need motivation. You don't need affirmations. You're doing it anyways. What are those things? What are those amazing things that you're doing that you love so much? And how can you integrate more of that into your life? And sometimes it's just, sometimes you do create a business, right? We create businesses out of what we love, but sometimes you can work for a business that actually feeds those parts of you, that gives you what you love. My favorite businesses that I've worked for in the past, which again, I say sometimes, I'm like, I'm really grateful this one didn't work out. Like, cause I'm like, man, I think I would have stayed there forever. They also gave me, like, I had a job that fed my soul. But if we didn't have these specific challenges, I'm pretty sure I'd still be there. Not that it wasn't like, again, my life would have been fine. I just love what I do today. But it was something that was so meaningful and purposeful that every day, even though it was super chaotic, by the way, it was like the entertainment and fashion industry, super chaotic. I loved what I did. I love the challenge. I love going in. I loved facing it. And when people say like it's a toxic environment, I didn't think it was toxic. I was around the same dynamic. So what's the difference? Is that I loved the challenge. I loved being pushed. I loved being asked these questions. And it's like, okay, let's make the achievable or the unachievable achievable today. That's what you want. We could do this. This is our deadline. We could do this. And it was also in an area of life that was quite inspiring to me. So one person will label something as toxic, then another person labels that inspiring. Who's right and who's wrong? We're both right and we're both wrong. It's toxic for someone who doesn't like have a purpose around it, but it's inspiring for someone who does. And so it's quite interesting because if we can even look at those dynamics within ourselves, we start to get all this evidence about who we are and what we love. And then we just get to invest more time in it. Build your life around what you love. It makes a difference, I promise.
Well, when it comes to procrastination, right? Even though I love doing the podcast, I love talking to guests, I love having these deep conversations, getting to know the other person, the guest, and learning new things. I'm very consistent when it comes to putting episodes out. I told myself I'm going to put one out every single week. I'm going to try to have guests. If I don't have a guest, then I might as well just record an episode, a shorter one by myself, just explaining something or just a topic I'm passionate about. However, right, and this is the part that I wanted to get. One of the things I procrastinate the most is researching and especially contacting new guests. And I was talking to a previous guest a couple of weeks ago about procrastination and these things. Like, yes, I'm passionate about this. I enjoyed having this conversation. I might be anxious or nervous right before the call, but right in the middle of the call or just in the middle of the episode, I'm relaxed. I'm in the present moment. I'm enjoying the conversation. But the fact me emailing, me calling, me DMing people creates this emotional charge, a lot of anxiety, a lot of I get overwhelmed, and the reason why sometimes I don't have a guest for a specific week is because I've procrastinated way too much to a point of saying, okay, I run out of guests. I need to now do something on my own. And it's finding that balance because I think, yes, I agree with what you're saying. It's like if you're passionate about something, if you feel excited about something, you it's not that you're not going to procrastinate, but you're going to procrastinate less. But even some things that has to do with that specific thing, you will procrastinate more. How can somebody overcome that, or not even exactly overcome? Because I don't think that we will ever overcome procrastination, but just lower the resistance between us and the task.
So lower the resistance between your perception of that you should be doing the task. So like, for example, if I was working with you, it made me giggle a little bit because I was like, why would I want him to stop doing this? Every time you procrastinate, you don't have a guest on, which allows you to be the expert. And you get to show up as the expert and you get to share your wisdom and you get to share your knowledge to a greater degree. And it's like, if you're not procrastinating and you have guests on all the time, then you don't get to do that, which means to me, I know because you have that inner strategy, it's meaningful to you. It's meaningful to you, and that's beautiful. And so like we sit here and we judge our behaviors as right or wrong, and it's like sometimes our strategies, it makes me giggle because I'll look at things and I'm like, oh, I obviously didn't want to do that. Like, or sometimes I'm like, I obviously wanted to do that because I really made that occur. And I look at that and I'm like, I ask the question, if I wasn't doing that, what would I have missed out on? So if you were not procrastinating and you were on top of it, you would have missed out on realizing you're also the expert, and incorporating that to a greater degree. And that's inspiring.
Well, coming a full circle now, that comes the imposter syndrome.
Yep.
It's just like imposter is like, okay, who am I to just give advice or wisdom or anything? And it's funny because I've talked to friends where I'm very I have a great I have a high level of self-awareness. I have very good intuition, and then I just help my friends. I just tell them things and about life, about mindset, about all
Mhm.
these kind of things, and they keep telling me every now and then, you should be the one with the microphone. It's like, no, I'm okay with the guest having the floor. But comes down to that, comes down, it's like I'd rather
Yeah.
have guests now because I have the imposter syndrome, because who am I, what's my, I don't need a degree, but what have I accomplished in my life that gives me the authority to
Yeah.
talk about a specific topic?
And so this is really cool because this is what I love about our intuition is your intuition is pushing you to procrastinate. So you have to show up all by yourself and talk about something. And at the end of every time you talk, do you realize that there's a certain level of expertise you had? And had you not given yourself the opportunity to speak, you wouldn't have even experienced that. Can you see that?
I mean, I definitely I see it, and I know I've been doing a lot of self work trying to understand that, and in my mind has been okay. I think I know exactly where it comes from. I'm always been very very curious, asking very a lot of questions, very deep, a lot of them, extremely deep questions. And I remember being dismissed a lot or just ignored when I was a kid. It's like, okay, clearly nobody cares, and even though that was a story, and it keeps being a story, the fact that even talking to friends, even talking to family members, when I dive deep into a specific topic, I've just told myself, you know what? Probably they don't care, or probably whatever. Fill in the blanks, any kind of excuse, and I see that as a pattern, and I'm trying to change those stories. When we face with these challenges, as you said, that we have our limiting beliefs, stories we have told ourselves since we were a kid, and it wasn't something that we decided to do. It was our brain created that story to help us understand an event. How do we change that story, or how do we
Mhm.
reframe it in a way that becomes permanent, and now
Mhm.
we have a different behavior because of
Mhm.
that?
Well, so again, this is beautiful because again, I don't want you to have a different behavior. This
Well,
is
I mean,
we keep trying to change ourselves, but if you don't have this behavior, you're not getting on and sharing your wisdom. And so it's like, why would I want him to stop that? So this is the very behavior that's driving you to own that part of yourself, to move beyond the self-doubts and the imposter syndrome and say, I'm going to do it anyways. And every time you pick up that microphone and just speak on your own, you experience your own wisdom, your own knowledge. I don't want to take that away from you. So until that's done, until you have that certainty, that's a beautiful strategy for you to have. So this is where when we ask ourselves these questions, it's like we sit there and we say, and we're like, why do I have this? What's wrong with me? Right? Instead of saying, why do I have this? What am I doing? Why am I doing this that it's actually helping me? So it's changing the dynamic and talking to yourself as a friend. Talk to yourself as a friend instead of that person who's like, what's wrong with you? Right? It's like, what actually is right with me right now? Like, why is this important for me to be doing? What is it driving me to do? And how is it helping me? So that's a really important dynamic. The other important thing to remember too is, we have this perception of when we get hooked on something, we want that to happen all the time. So infatuating with something, it becomes an addiction. It's an addiction to a behavior. So for example, if someone's been really present with you and really nice and really sweet, and you have maybe like another parent at home who's like really frustrating and more challenging and harder on you, you're going to get hooked on wanting to be coddled and treated really nicely and really well, just because you now have an infatuation with that behavior because you're not seeing how the challenge actually served you. It's the challengers in our lives that help us to use our voice. It's the challengers that get us to speak up. It's the challengers that actually remind us to push ourselves in a different way. When we're over supported, and we see this quite frequently, when you see kids that are over supported, they're entitled. Like, they're pretty bratty. They're super entitled. You can't even get them to like clean their room or like clean anything. They come over and you're like, I want to smack your kid right now. Like, how are you just letting that occur? Because this child is over supported, they're being coddled, and they're not being challenged. They're not being challenged to actually grow, to evolve, and to basically function sometimes in normal society. So when we're not appreciating that challenger, we get hooked and addicted to the supporter, not realizing that the supporter enables us to stay small, where the challenger is the one that makes us grow. And this also happens in business, right? If I have no competition, what am I going to do with my company? I don't need to innovate, right? It's the competition that gets me to innovate. It's the competition that makes me think of new things. It's the competition that makes me step outside the box. It's all those people out there that are doing similar things, or sometimes even the same thing as me. If I don't step up my game, I'll fall behind. And I'm grateful for those people. They're the ones who push me to grow, not the ones who support me, not the ones who like overprotect me. It's the ones who push me and challenge me. And sometimes even my friends are like, what are you doing? like, like, really, Carly? Like, is this happening? And my parents do it too. Or they're like, what are you doing? And I've even had, yeah, as an adult, I'm 41 years old. I've even had I remember my dad yelled at me. It was like at the beginning of the year. And he's like, pisses me off when you do this. And then he said it, and I looked at him and I was like, thanks, Dad. I was like, I was really out of it there. I was like, I really appreciate that. But had he just sat there and coddled me and let me play the victim, I just would have stayed the victim. But instead, he yelled at me and he got pissed off at me and he swore at me. My dad barely ever swears. And I was like, whoa. And I really soaked it in, and I got over it and I moved forward. Right. And so this is that dynamic where it's like when we have this unrealistic expectation to always be heard, to always have someone nice to us, to have all these things that we're hooked on, we're addicted to, we miss out on the opportunities that we're being given by the universe, by our challengers, to really help us to grow. And I've done this with challenges of all, like whatever challenge you can think of, I've helped people with this. So this applies to everything, because I know sometimes people are like, oh, but what about these extreme things, right? I've worked on car accidents, I've worked on rapes, I've worked on deaths, I've worked on suicides, all of this stuff. And so all of this actually applies. And when we can see like our life for what it truly is, instead of what we're thinking it should be in the label, we become grateful and we embrace life to a greater degree. It does make us more resilient because we don't have unrealistic expectations on life or people.
Yeah, finding that balance that sometimes is completely outside our control. If we are too coddle, we become entitled. If we face too many challenges, that can shatter our confidence or our sense of self. Is something that is interesting, because those two things, when they go to extreme, really work against us. And finding that balance and things that are completely outside our control is tough. And how we and the power, I guess, of reframing certain things, and how you can take things from something bad that happened to you and see it from a different angle and maybe give it like a positive twist. But even going back to me wanting quote unquote a change, it wasn't about changing behavior, it was more about feeling more comfortable with me sharing my opinion that for many years was dismissed. And if I change the story, then I'm embracing
Mm-hmm.
this, let's say, power of mine, and then
Mm-hmm.
I can speak more freely. I would do more things, I would share my opinion more often, and I would, like I say, help people if that were the case, because now
Mm-hmm.
I'm embracing that part of me that I hide for so long because I felt that nobody
Mm-hmm.
wanted to begin with.
Yeah, and this is the dynamic of just seeing the other side, where even just not being heard, it's like, how does it serve us? Because there are environments. I mean, I love speaking. I speak all day, every day on a topic that I love. But there's some individuals who perceive I'm very introverted and very quiet, right? But that's because the topics that we're discussing are not interesting to me, but also the topics that I discuss are not interesting to them. And so if I sit there and I want to be heard, but I'm talking about something that someone's not interested in, it's kind of rude. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, Who am I to say you have to listen to me? I don't even want to listen to what you say, let alone you listen to what I say, because that's how uninterested we are. Again, there's nothing wrong with this. It's just two people with a different set of values and things that are different in life. I remember a friend of mine, she was so fun. When she first had kids when she was 21 years old. And I was so worried because we were so young. And I was like, oh my gosh, she's still going to be friends with me? Because now she's hanging out with all the moms and I don't talk about kids, and I'm 21. I'm not even like married. I'm not interested in getting married. And I was like, are we still going to be friends? She's my favorite. And one day she comes back after like the school event or something. And she's like, oh, so nice to hang out with you. She's like, I love my kids. And she's like, but I don't need to talk about them all day, every day. She's like, I have a life outside my children. And she's like, it's just such a breath of fresh air to be around you. Right. So here's this woman who goes to this dynamic in this place, and she genuinely is going to get ignored for talking about the other things that are important to her. But why is that? Because in that dynamic, those other women have a higher value and higher priority on their kids. And that's okay. Some people have it as their top priority. Some people have it as their second, third, fourth, fifth. Some people have kids and they don't even have it as a priority. Those are the people who you often find wind up leaving, and like a mom or a dad that leaves and leaves their kids to someone else because they don't have a higher priority on the kids to the same degree. It's not a good or bad thing. We all can't be the same, but it's understanding people. So if I didn't understand this person and I didn't understand my friend and I just tried to talk about her kids all day long, she wouldn't have been friends with me anymore. She doesn't want to hear it. And so if I sit there and I judge her for not listening to me, instead of saying, what will this person listen to? What do they really care about? What do they love? That maybe they would actually listen. That's a different dynamic, because nobody's going to listen to you if you're just talking to them and telling them what you want to express. Sometimes people also want to be heard. Sometimes people also want to share what they want to share. And sometimes we're so different, we don't even care. And that's okay. Like, that's genuinely okay. That's why we have 8 billion people on the planet, because we all have different interests and we don't have to be friends with everyone. You don't have to hang out with everyone. You don't even have to listen to everyone. You know, Elon Musk puts it in a really funny way. He talks about how, like, at his office and stuff, he'll listen to people, and if they're not saying something that's of value to him, he literally will walk away mid conversation. Like, he just walks away. And I'm like,
Yeah.
baller. Yeah, I was
Yeah.
like, but that's the dynamic, is that if he just sits there, and this is our unrealistic expectation, if he just sits there and listens to everything that everyone has to say, he doesn't have enough time in the day to get his life done, to get these other things done, to get all the things that we are inspired by. The very things that inspire us, he wouldn't have time for if every person is heard. And so that's why we want to see both sides of the situations, is how does it serve us sometimes to not be heard, right? And even sometimes, like, even when we're heard, because we think that that's our fantasy, that we're always going to be heard, is like, what are some of the drawbacks to that? What are some of the drawbacks to that dynamic? Because we're only seeing one side. And remember, everything has both sides. When we can embrace both sides of a situation, that's where true resilience comes. That's when we really start to build resilience.
Seems like nobody's fully introverted. They haven't found their people, I guess. Because once you find your person, you just feel like, okay, I can talk for hours. But even then, I think that yes, what you're saying is true, and then I agree a lot with that, in a sense that when everything that you see from one angle or from one side of the coin, it has a different side. If you see something from a positive side, you have a negative, and vice versa. And but for some reason, we tend to choose the negative side. Why do we keep choosing the negative side of a specific event or something that happened to us, instead of looking from a more positive angle? Because at the end of the day, perception is the stabilizer of the mind. If we change our perception, if we reframe a thing, we will be more at peace and even happier.
Yeah, because for one, we don't always know. Two, there's a lot of noise in the outside world. Like, this even happens. I love this stuff. I do this stuff for a living. I try to think about it on a regular basis, but there's still like a lot of noise. You're going to have a lot of feedback and opinions from other people, some of them who we really revere. And those can also have us struggling to like stay connected with what we really truly want. So it's just remember, like, this isn't an easy thing, but it's also a hard thing worth pursuing, because at the end of the hard, you're just more grateful for your life. You're more grateful for who you are. You're not trying to be someone else. You don't think you have to, should. You're not trying to make other people someone else, because people just disconnect from you when you try to turn them into something that they don't want to be, and instead of having these unrealistic expectations, we shift. And here's what I love to this is what I love to teach people. There's an infinite number of triggers and charges and fears that we have. When I say infinite, I genuinely mean infinite. I like when people focus on the top priority, and the top priority are the things that are bothering you the most. So you don't have to focus on everything all at once. We kind of break it down. It's like peeling away an onion. It's like just chipping away. Start with what's frustrating you the most, start with what's bothering you the most, and just keep going step by step. That's it. And that's kind of, it's fun, because it's like also our opportunity to connect with ourselves. It's almost a self-care aspect to continue to connect with ourselves, to continue to understand ourselves. Even understanding others is a self-care aspect, because the less that we're trying to push our lives onto others, the more that we actually get to connect with ourselves too, and they get to connect with them. And then it's like a more symbiotic relationship. So yeah, it's quite an inspiring dynamic, but it's more just also finding the way that works best for you. For me, and what I really like to help people with is, again, focus on one thing at a time, the thing that's the most challenging, the thing that's the hardest, and then just start chipping away. And it's cool, because then at a certain point, and I'm sure you understand this because you love mindset, you start to think, what do I want to work on now? Like in the beginning, you're like, what do I have to work on? And then eventually you get to a point where you say, what do I actually want to work on? Like, what would be inspiring for me to overcome, and what would help me the most? So we kind of get to change the even relationship with personal development we have, to one of, I need to fix myself, to I just get to grow, and this is part of my opportunity, and what would I love to grow in next?
Yeah, when you get triggered by any event, whether it's something that someone said, or by a video you watch, or something that happened in your life, anything, you need I like to go down the rabbit hole. I don't do it as often, but just start, as you said, peeling that onion. Start asking myself questions on why, and keep going 2, 3, 4, 5 layers deep. And I've always believed in the power of questions. So the right question can give us insights and clarity, and I think that's what most people need. How do we become better at asking questions, especially asking questions to ourselves?
How do we get better is basically like, instead of just seeing ourselves as, again, that's what's wrong with me, I like to ask, like, why is this occurring? Why is this happening? Because anything that we perceive as on the way, right? We are inspired to do, even if it's challenging. If we perceive it as in the way, we're not inspired to do it. But if it's there and we can't get rid of it, it's like, okay, why is it here? How is this on the way? How is this experience, this challenge, what I'm going through, actually on the way to what's inspiring to me? And keep asking that question until you can actually feel like you feel gratitude. It's beyond acceptance. Acceptance, you don't feel. Acceptance, you're like, oh, I can accept that. And you're indifferent. But when you feel grateful, and I know people, I'm going to relate this to another experience that individuals have. When they listen to a song, when they watch a movie, when they see something inspiring, they get a tear of inspiration, and you feel your physiology change. That's what I'm asking you to do. You ask this question so many times that you become so grateful. You might get a tear of inspiration for your life, and you feel that physiology change, because your heart genuinely does open, and it's quite inspiring. So giving yourself permission to see your life in a different light, right? So it's all the things that it's like, what's wrong with me? Why do I do this? Instead of being like, why do I do this? It's like, well, why do I do this? What's going on? Why am I doing these things? Why is this actually occurring? And the answer might surprise you. I mean, again, I loved your example, because you procrastinating gets you to be the leader in information, in sharing knowledge, and sharing wisdom. And so it's like, why is he doing that? Well, that's why he's doing it. Why would I want to change that? I want you to be a leader. I definitely want you to be a leader. And if I'm not working with someone and I can't adjust and shift their mindset and get rid of limiting beliefs, and that's what does it for you, I want you genuinely to do that. I want you to have these strategies in place to make sure you're on track, you're inspired, and you get to do what you love, even if you don't believe in yourself, right? Like, what a beautiful strategy to overcome that. And so it's cool. It's like, instead of saying, what's wrong with me? It's like, why is it here? And then when we get to see it, man, that's inspiring.
I can see the. I'm trying to wrap my head around the that shift, right? Instead of what's wrong with me and why am I doing this, or in a more positive way. But sometimes I feel like that. Well, at least in my process, my questions has been, why is this thing triggering me? And then I start going question after question after question after question, and go deeper, 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 deeper. Because I think my goal, and I don't know if it's possible or not. I guess it depends. It depends on the person. Can I take the emotional charge out of the event? Can I take the emotional charge out of the thing that is making me uncomfortable, or just giving me pain, or giving me anxiety, or giving me fear? I think that is
Yes.
like the question.
Yes, you can take the emotional charge out. And to take the emotional charge out, it's asking that question. If it's giving you pain, you're not simultaneously seeing where you get the pleasure from it. You're not simultaneously seeing that it's also serving you in some way, shape, or form. And again, this is just something that I get to see on a regular basis. I was talking to a client and they were very frustrated because their ex just wasn't spending enough time with the kids and wasn't doing this or that. And they're super frustrated because their dad's not in their life. And I started asking, I was like, well, how is that on the way for you? How is that actually serving you that this individual is doing that? And they're like, well, they should be this person. They should, according to them. And I was like, that's not what I asked. How does that serve you? And when we could get to the crux of it, it winds up that this person has a really high value on personal development, really loves nurturing and taking care of their kids and paying attention to them in a very specific way. And the more the husband's gone, the more that she just gets to be herself. The more that person is disconnected, the more that she gets to make all the decisions for the kids. And I was like, okay, so sounds like you have full control. I was like, so if I bring your ex-husband back in, you lose that. I said, do you want that? And then truth comes out. No, I don't. I'm grateful for my life. I'm grateful he is the way he is because it gets me what I want. So we keep having these perceptions that things are supposed to be a certain way instead of asking why they are the way they are. And instead of pushing what we think needs to be right on other people, ask why they are that way for you. And then you'll become grateful for those things. And then you don't have to make someone try to do something they don't want. Because again, it's not a good or a bad thing. It's according to who, right? According to who. And by the way, this person is just really focused on business. They have a really, really, really top priority on business. They see their kids, not to the same degree as the mom does, but just a crazy high priority on business. So that's just what happens. That's life. And that happens quite frequently. It's not a good thing or a bad thing. It's just a thing until we put a label on it. So what we want to do is we want to really ask the questions that get rid of the labels, right? So if we have a label on something where it's good or bad, it's like, how can we shift that label so that we can see it as just a thing? Because if things are just things, you don't have to avoid bad things and seek good things. Remember when I talked about being addicted to that support and that praise? We don't want to be addicted to good things that they control us, that we're seeking them, we're doing whatever it takes to have them. We sacrifice ourselves to have those things that we label as good, as opposed to actually seeing both sides of a situation and being like, whoa, I don't have to sacrifice myself to have this. Is this something that I actually want? Would it actually be beneficial for me? Right? So we really want to ask those quality questions so that we're not controlled by the outside world and we can gain more control within ourselves.
I'm very much like that approach of asking yourself, how is this right for me? If I cannot control it anyway, how can I give it that twist? And seeing from an and sometimes we can do it by ourselves, and sometimes we need help from other people to make us see it from a different angle, because we have a lens to how we see the situation, how we see the world, that it blinds us from seeing from a perspective that can be more helpful for us over time. Which again, I love it, and this is something that I'm going to start asking myself more daily. Any type of negative thing that I experience, okay, how is this right for me, or how does this benefit me, either now or in the long term? Well, Carly, I've been having such a wonderful and uh, insightful conversation with you. But as a closing question, what is one belief or behavior that has positively impacted your life, let's say in the last 12 months?
Yeah, so definitely is, again, just really connecting with what's inspiring to me, right? Really make it. I don't know how to start. Like I stress it all the time. So this is my second podcast today. People don't really understand the power of it. So this is my second podcast today. Transparently, I have food poisoning. Genuinely, in between podcasts, I'm in bed the whole time. I feel really sick. But do I seem sick? No. When I'm on this call, I don't feel sick. I feel like a little tired, but I'm so inspired by what I'm doing that I get up and do it anyways. I'm not special. I'm not unique. I just made sure that I remember going through something hard, really, really hard, and saying to myself, how can I make this easier for myself? And I was like, I am going to fill my days with everything I love. And as a result, I know that even though this time will be hard for me, I still have all these other things that are fulfilling and inspiring. And that helps me have resilience. That helps me have that strength, right? That inner strength. So make sure that no matter what you're doing, no matter what's going on, focus on those things. Find the things that inspire you. Find the things, we've definitely re-listened to. I've given you guys so many insights on how to ask yourself questions to find those things. But definitely go through some of those questions that I've asked in this podcast and re-listen, because if you just sit down and answer those questions, you'll find that. You'll find that. And when you just fill your life with those things, it doesn't matter what's going on, you're going to do it anyways. You'll definitely do it anyways.
Love that answer. Carly, it was a pleasure having you on and very insightful. I could go even longer for hours, honestly, because I love these kind of conversations. But where can people find you if they want to work with you, if want to keep up with your work?
Yeah, so they can go to my website, which is carlypepin.com. Yeah, and you can contact me directly there or any social media channels.
Excellent. Yeah, I'll add those to the video, show notes, and YouTube description. Carly, once again, it was a total pleasure. And thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you for having me.